Yeah.
Hello and welcome to Anxiety Hacks. I'm your host, Kate Hudson Hall, and thank you to everybody for listening. I'm so pleased that you're here today. So this is a podcast for people to share real stories about suffering with anxiety, and what tools has helped them to move forward. And then also talking to top experts who work with people with anxiety and how they help others to be able to break those difficult behaviors, so many difficult behaviors around anxiety. So before we dive in, I just want to mention my new book also called Anxiety Hacks. And within the book, there are so many different techniques and tools and ways to be able to help you to begin to break those patterns. So if you would like to check that out, the book is on Amazon. So I'm very excited about that. So have a look, see what you think. Now, our two fabulous guests today, we have LeNae and Dr. Trip Goolsby. Now, LeNae and Trip are the founders of Infinite Health Integrative Medicine Center, a precision medicine practice with a niche focus on health optimization, age reversal, and regenerative medicine. They are also best-selling authors and speakers. They have been featured in various magazines, publications such as mindbodygreen.com, psychcentral.com, and many others, as well as having been guests on a variety of national and international podcasts. Now, their 4 pillars approach to health optimization has helped thousands of women and men migrate, and in many cases resolve their anxiety naturally. This is accomplished by evaluating and, in many cases, modifying nutritional habits, physical fitness and regimes, optimizing metabolics and hormones, as well as embracing their proprietary mind-body coaching program. So LeNae and Trip, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. I'm really excited to be here today with you and your listeners.
Oh, it's great to have you. So the 4 pillars approach. So tell us all about that.
Yes, well, you did a really nice bullet point on what we look at when patients come to us. Patients will come to us for a myriad of, health concerns. And among them, we quite frequently see people struggling with stress, anxiety, and depression and those issues. But regardless of what somebody comes into the door for, we plug them into that 4 pillars program. And like you said, so we're looking at nutritional habits, because the food that we eat has a large impact, probably, and people underrate the impact that food has on their perception and what's going on in the body and how that projects, in their decisions and their actions. So we look to modify that. We're looking at whether or not they exercise or not, and getting them to start engaging in activities that they actually enjoy. Because, if you hate to run, you're not going to run, you're not going to be successful at it. So we look to see what is something that they actually enjoy doing.
And I think that's really important, because people, I've got to go to the gym, like everybody else, but they don't enjoy it, so they won't stick it out.
They won't. I mean, for example, I don't like going to the gym. I'm not going to exercise in a group situation. But I might get on my bike at home on the Peloton or whatnot. And so, you need to figure out what you enjoy and do more of that. And then we're looking at the metabolics and the hormones, and we know through epigenetics that we can actually reverse the hormonal component to get somebody back to where they were when they were in their prime, which for most of us was, those high school, college years when our metabolism was peak.
Yeah, for me, it was in the 1800s. Does it get all the way back that far?
Oh, please. Now you threw off my train of thought. Yeah, so and we utilize bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for that. And then, like you said, we have a proprietary mind body coaching program that is based off our book, or rather the book was based off the program. It started out as handouts that we would give patients to read, and it's kind of this evolutionary process where we would give a handout to a patient, and then when the patient came back, we're like, okay, did you read it? Did you understand it? And then there were exercises appended to that. And so now it's become this kind of the Bible for infinite health, if you will. And what we've seen is we get really good results when patients are compliant with 3 out of the 4, but we get transformational results, not just in health, but in all aspects of their lives when they embrace the mind body component. Trip, you want to add?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that looking at how the patients, they come in with like she said, a myriad of problems, and a lot of them have some chronic debilitating diseases and things like that, and they can ultimately they become focused on their disease process, which is and fighting the disease process, so to speak. So that creates, in and of itself, creates a significant anxiety, because they're dwelling on, well, where's this going to go? The mind is, as you know, very, very, very creative, and as soon as a patient starts dwelling on the end result of well, their obesity or their hypertension or any of those chronic
The what if,
yeah,
the negative what ifs.
all those things that are going on in there, all those scenarios that are completely unreal, they're focusing on those things all the time. So part of the mind body course, it really helps them refocus on where they're going. The first thing I ask them to do is create an image of their successful health, for example. And that image of health creates that metric that they're, instead of focusing on the disasters that they're anticipating, they start focusing on that affirmative outcome that they're creating for themselves. And that just makes such a huge difference in how they conceptualize their health, and how much stress they place themselves under, so to speak, for fighting their current problems.
Yeah, so it's getting that clear vision of the direction they're going in and working with that part of their mind, isn't it? And
exactly,
kind of reprogramming it and getting them really focused. I love it.
Yeah.
So I think the other components, obviously, there are all sorts of, I mean, the health starts in the mind. We know that. So the other components that now we have measurable, as LeNae was talking about, we have a measure. We can actually measure the effect that it has on our DNA inside of our cells, and how the aging process actually occurs. And interestingly, we have some incredible cases where we've reversed the biological age of the patient 10, 20 years. And we're successful at doing that by analyzing how the DNA has been shut down. And that's the basic process that happens during aging. So as we implement all of these pathways directed specifically for that patient, then see after 6 months or 12 months is the biological age will go backwards in the vast majority of cases. When you can't change your chronological age. I mean, your birthday is your birthday, but looking at what you can do biologically and the things that we implement, that it makes a huge difference in how patients feel, and ultimately their longevity and their health span. And that's what's critically important.
Yeah. And so within the 4 pillars, so I know, LeNae, you touched on it. But can we kind of break it down a bit further about what specifically will happen?
What happens when somebody's
when somebody comes to see you, and then to work through the 4 pillars?
Well, so the first visit, I talked to them about creating that successful health image. And there's a lot of information that comes out in the first few visits that we talk about. The first visit, asking them to read the first chapter of the book, which is Universal Law of Success and Health, and then the first exercise is the successful health image, which they sometimes have problems conceptualizing, but it's making them think about what they actually want, not what they don't want anymore. Because many people, we focus on the negative thing, because that's the first thing we learn is I don't want that. So, but no,
well, and that's what drives somebody into the doctor in the first place, right? I mean, they don't go there because I'm feeling good today, I think I'll go to the doctor. There has to be this pain point that drives them in. And so people are acutely aware of what they don't want.
I know, it's really interesting because people don't realize that, do they?
They really
I sit
don't.
with my clients and I say to them, okay, so no, where are we going with this or whatever? And then they give a long list about what they don't want. And I said, okay, well, that's what you don't want, but what actually do you want?
Right. And which is, it's great for somebody to know what they don't want, because when you have that acute awareness, then it's relatively easy to flip it, right? Flip it to what you do want. So, okay, well, you're in pain. What is the opposite to pain for, what does that look like to you? What does that feel like to you? What would you be doing in that scenario that you're not able to do now? And really getting them to kind of intentionally daydream about what that looks like, and bring in all the senses and get them focused on that track. And we have an exercise that we call it the form, feeling, function exercise. And it's really designed to get them to get it out of here and onto the paper so that they can list it out and start getting into the feeling and the emotion and the visualization of that happy end result.
And I remind patients also, when they're thinking about their woes and their worries and they're struggling against something, that's actually they're creating more anxiety. I mean, Mark Twain, I love a quote by Mark Twain. He said, I've had thousands of worries in my life, obviously creating anxiety in that. And he said, a couple of them were actually real. So I think so when you think about that, as you know, your mind is creating all sorts of scenarios that are hypothetical, then we have a exercise to make them regroup themselves, say, I'm doing it again, and then refocus on that successful health image and what they're actually creating, what they desire to create. And that's just massive. It just is very helpful.
So that's the first appointment. And then from there, we send them out to get we have a very comprehensive panel of laboratories that we send them out to, and they're really more expansive than what a traditional doctor is going to ask for. And then when we get those results in on that second appointment, we're looking at their complaints, we're looking at their goals, and then we're looking at the information that came back in those labs. And a lot of times patients are told by physicians, you're normal. We actually don't want our patients normal. We have a very strict parameter for what we're looking for in those labs to get them back to where they were when they were optimal. And that's the key. Do you want to talk about?
Well, genomically we're all different, and there's only a small segment of our DNA that actually creates that difference. But when we focus on those differences that I see in those laboratories, and sometimes people want whole genomic sequencing, but at that point, when we have that information, then we're much more specific. Instead of using a statistical optimum, we can actually focus on the personal optimum, and that really has a huge impact. Also, obviously, you're not using a statistical. All medicine, for example, pharmaceuticals, the vast majority of those are built on a bell curve, a statistical curve, and two standard deviations from the mean. And that's the same thing for laboratories, but we don't know who those people were and what other potential medical problems they had while they were getting those laboratories done. So is your patient going to be the same as another patient? No. So those are very critical elements in deciding the therapies that we introduce. I'm sorry.
So have you got an example, maybe of a client that came in, and then once you'd identified that, then you decided on the pathway of the help that you would provide for them?
Thousands of examples. Pick one.
Well, for example, you have weight loss, for example, is one that has a very there's one in 1,000 people has a gene that says, well, I'll lose weight by actually modifying my sugar intake or my glucose intake or any foods that turn into sugar. Whereas the vast majority of the population, if you do that sequencing, what happens is that they all benefit from decreasing their carbohydrate intake, for example. And so knowing that little difference there can make all the difference, obviously, in the success of the program.
Case study. She's asking for a case study.
Oh, well, okay. Case study. So let me talk about, I love this case study because it was a woman that came in with multiple medical problems. She
Right.
she was obese.
How old was she?
She was 58 at the time, I believe.
58-year-old female.
58-year-old female, multiple medical problems. That had been going on for years. She had 5 or 6 different subspecialists involved in her care. They thought she had lupus and Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and autoimmune hepatitis, and her diabetes was getting worse and worse and worse. And the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back that brought her into my office was that her doctor wanted to put her on a 4th diabetic medicine, and she was headed toward insulin injections and that. And so she had heard me speak at a Rotary Club event, and so she made an appointment, came in, and during that initial visit, as I'm talking to her about all those things that she really wants, I try to push the patients toward maybe higher outcomes than they think they can do very often. So having seen the success I have, and so we were talking about, she loved to bicycle with her husband, could never get over about 11 miles an hour as a speed, even when she was drafting him. So I said, and she had never finished a century ride, and they love to do the century ride for Alzheimer's disease. So I said, well, and that was coming up 4 months in the future. So I said, well, why don't you put down here, I complete the century ride at an average of 15 miles an hour. She guffawed. I mean, it was hilarious. Not a second went by. She says, "You're crazy. I'll never be able to do that." I said,
Really?
humor me. And so about 2 weeks before the ride, I had corrected all her liver abnormalities. I had corrected, her balance. Her energy was, bouncing off the wall. And she came in from their last training ride, and she said, "You won't believe how fast I'm going." And I said, "Oh, tell me." She says, 15.6 miles an hour. We did 20 miles at 15.6 miles an hour. And then 2 weeks later, she did the century ride. She completed the ride. She hashtagged me on Facebook and said, I finished my first century ride at 14.96 miles an hour average.
Oh, wow.
Hard time to this day. But she lost significant amounts of weight. Her hemoglobin A1C, if you know what that is, it's an average, a 4-month average of her blood sugars, had gone from 9.2, which is an average of about 200 plus, to 5.8, I believe it was. So she had gone down to an average of about 120 or 130. So on her blood sugars. So that's just an incredible result, and it subsequently normalized. And I see her to this day, and she's doing phenomenally. She's 63 now, 62 or 63. Her average speed now in that 20-mile training is 22 miles an hour. Her husband had to come in because he couldn't keep up anymore.
Oh, that's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. And these are the kind of results we see when we get the right stuff and the right thought processes into people, and make them focus on their success and not their their potential downfalls.
Yeah. So if you had somebody that came in that, their main problem was anxiety.
So we have that's a combination in almost every patient I see, I think. And for example, there, people that have COPD or congestive heart failure or bad degenerative arthritis and they're not moving around anymore. Those things tend to create more and more stories. So they're very anxious and they're worried about outcomes of treatments and new medications and these things. And when I managed to eliminate a bunch of their medications, and again, focusing on that successful end result is one of the things that, and in our book, The Law of Allowance tells us that we have to embrace the moment that we're at, the health that we're at, before we can actually move in that affirmative direction, because that focusing on the health and all the medications you're taking, all the potential problems that you have, creates that worry, creates that anxiety, and builds your cortisol levels and creates more problems.
Well, I think a lot of times some of those medications, I think sometimes, particularly in our area, physicians are quick to diagnose people with anxiety and then hand them a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
And that may not be an accurate diagnosis and may not be the best course of treatment for them. I mean, if your hormones are imbalanced and your internal systems aren't operating at optimal levels, then that can present itself to anxiety and stress and depression. And I think that's a real problem in healthcare today, actually.
Right. Depression is so easy to write a RI for depression. Oh, here, take a little Zoloft or Lexapro or whatever they want to write, and then it gets the patient in and out in 5 minutes, and that's kind of the flaw of healthcare at this point in the United States, I guess.
Yeah, it's like that in the UK as well. Yeah.
So I when my patients come in with those, particularly the female patients, because the physicians are I don't know why, so quick to write those antidepressant prescriptions. I'll say, look, I want to get you off of these. And as soon as I've balanced their hormones and got them optimized in their metabolic and hormonal pathways, they don't need them anymore. I wean them off. I can't tell you how many men and women I've gotten off of antidepressants simply because their hormones were suboptimal.
Wow.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I don't see a whole lot of it in the medical literature talking about it either, but we know that the symptoms are anxiety and people are very quick to adapt the term depression, which very often is just melancholy, a reactive melancholy for one reason or the other. And so if the physician is thoughtful about it, and they should be doing hormone panels and evaluating those things so that those people are not getting drugs without needing them.
And so how does it work, the program? I mean, how long is it, and how does it work?
Well, I mean, obviously it's tailored to the individual and what the individual goals are
and results,
what their what their happy end result is. Generally, when people start out with us, they're coming twice a month, or we do video sessions if they don't live here, but we're seeing them twice a month, because we spend a lot of time in the coaching realm and inspiring and keeping them focused and keeping them empowered, because it requires the patient to take an ownership interest in their health. We're very different. When you go to a lot of doctors, you're going for a pain point, they write you a script and they're like, good luck with that, call me if you need me. But for us, it's okay, we're going to see you in a week and a half. How did you do? You're going to show us your food logs. We're going to, you're going to take your body temperatures, and we're going to evaluate all of that. And did you do the reading, and what did you learn? And, how is that supporting you, and what else is going on in your life?
You're not a victim. You're the creator of your reality. I mean, that's the basic premise.
That's a lot of work for a lot of people. I think today everybody wants to abuse their bodies and pop the pills and eat fast food, and then they go to the doctor and they're like, give me a pill and fix me. But the fact of the matter is, you're the pill you're looking for. You are the creator of your health status, and you really need to start showing up and stepping in and doing the work and taking your health power back. And not everybody is ready to take, that responsibility on. And
the other thing is, one of the basic premises also of the program is creating the medical mastermind. The patient is like the chief executive officer, and has to surround him or herself with this cohort of individuals, professionals, medical professionals, that are actually all working together harmoniously. That's the key. Harmoniously help them create their outcome for them. So get together, you make the mastermind concept was a business concept initially, but it works so well in medicine that when the individual takes ownership and really picks their physicians and their other medical personnel, based on their desire to help them get to what they want to achieve, it's magic. I think those are things that we also go over at length with the patients very early on.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because they've got to take ownership, and they've got to, they've got to put the work in, make that decision that they really truly want to change.
Yeah, well, and one of the questions we're constantly asking is, what do you want? What do you want? Why do you want it? What are you willing to give or give up to receive it?
Yeah, excellent. I love it. Oh, and so within the program, so it's working with the mind, and what other help do people get when you're working with the mind?
So I talk about my accountability modality.
We have a very unique accountability modality that might not be proper with the Geneva Code.
Geneva Convention, but yeah. So I tell all my patients, if they basically, they're the boss, but if they don't do what I tell them to, I have a set of color-coded tasers that I'll use on
them. But that gets focused.
Yeah. Well, so basically it's like a 12 module kind of program, if you will. And if patients are coming every other week, they're expected to go through at least one module per month, or every other week, depending on, what's going on in their life. Yeah. At the end of every module, there's homework. There's, an experience. It's a very experiential exercise that they're accountable for doing. We do have patients who get through all 12 modules, and they continue seeing us, right? Because they're, continuing to get their hormones optimized. Or sometimes we have patients who, they're doing really well. They've met their physical goals, but they're still dealing with stressors in their life. So they'll actually continue to come and spend time with him just to get clarity and a different perspective on whatever their stress point is at the time. So
yeah, because life can be like a roller coaster. We never know what's going to be thrown at us, do we? So
yeah.
So that's I think in no small part the other things that we do with the regenerative medicine and those things, when people come in and they're somewhat debilitated and can't be active, those programs that I use there help regenerate joints and all of these other things that help them become much more mobile again, much more vibrant and vital. So those things, I mean, it's a very comprehensive program that we do that allows patients to really get back into a much more youthful state, and it enhances those final outcomes.
Incredible. It's fascinating. I love it. Oh, I could sit and chat with you for hours.
I know. So much to talk about, so many. I mean, we've been doing this for about over a decade now, so there's a lot of good stories.
Yeah. And so if people wanted to come and to come to the program, how would they do it?
Yeah, so the best thing to do is to go to our website, which is yourinfinitehealth.com. Or they can call the office if they prefer that. It's 504-323-0025. We do offer a complimentary discovery call with one of our wellness coaches, and they can walk you through and answer any questions to see if you'd be a good fit for what we do.
And then
also, yes, if you wanted to get the book, because Think and Live Longer is our book. Like I said, it's the Bible of the practice. It lends itself very well for anybody anywhere as a supplement to their health journey, wherever they are. And that book is available on Amazon. It's called Think and Live Longer. Or they can call the office. We'll be happy to ship you one as well.
Yeah, and then we'll also put all the links and everything in the show notes below, so people can find it there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much to both of you, to Trip and LeNae for joining me and sharing this just fabulous, insightful information. We will need to jump on Amazon and get the book.
Yes. Oh, I'll send you one.
Oh, thank you. Oh, well, thank you both so much. It's so kind of you.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it.
Thank you. So that's all for today's episode of Anxiety Hacks. And thank you to everybody for listening. And before we go, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes. You never miss an episode. And then also let us know what you think of the show by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be fantastic. So thank you to everybody for listening. And I look forward to chatting with you in the next episode.